Welcome back to the Blister and Muck podcast. I'm Jenny Mason, your host and the creator of the Blister and Muck series. This week, the opeRATives take to the beach for martial training. They're all tied up in sand-to-sand combat. In the last episode, Blister opened the bell tower guest house to the circus panther named Rip. Hopefully, having a ferocious predator will ward off the wharf rats. Only then can Blister move Muck out of Madam Putreska's caverns, where life as an opeRATive is clearly taking its toll on the poor Silver Whisker. Why, just last week, cat scratches striped Muck from head to toe. Blister can't just stand by while his apprentice gets roughed up and ruined. And as we're about to see, life as an opeRATive is turning out to be much tougher than Blister ever realized. For instance, besides having to do what other rats tell him to do, Blister is expected to exercise and stay in shape. At least Madam Putreska takes her team to the beach for this training. Then again, where else do you go to get big muscles? Surely, there's no better place. It stands to reason, is all I'm saying. I can see my producers are threatening to confiscate my microphone. They've haddock up to here with this super fish shell humor. Of course I'll comply, but not because I cave to peer pressure. We simply have bigger fish to fry. For instance, while the opeRATives are otherwise octopied with a workout, 2 of Dr. Van Sangfroid's addled victims regain their ability to speak. What clues will they share? Will they have any lobstervations leading to the wicked doctor's whereabouts? I urge you to dolphinately keep listening, buoys and gulls. Episode 17. Silence Broken. On a slimy, sandy crescent in a hidden cove, opeRATives exited an old buccaneer tunnel. Milky waves frothed against the stone cliffs. They roared on the upsurge. They sizzled and hissed in retreat. The breezy air bit with cold teeth. Tangy salt perfumes wafted through the cove while gulls coasted overhead. Cormorants dove in and out of the churning breakers, like busy black needles mending a frayed garment. The rats prepared for martial training by first stretching and then submitting to Seltzer's kinesthetic drills. "Squats!" the bird squawked. 1, 2, 1, 2. Jog in place. Hip, 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 hip. When their fur clumped with sweat, Madam Putreska took over. She demonstrated a hand-to-hand combat technique and then instructed the opeRATives to pair up and practice on each other. No sooner had Blister turned to Muck when Yuck clapped his back. "Come on, let's see what you've got, Tough Tail," she said. "Oh, my dear Yuck," Muck said. "I hope you perpend painstakingly. Blister is a pugnacious picaro." Yuck chuckled at the warning. The third time Blister went face down in the brown, salt, slimy sand, he took his time getting up. He scanned the beach, wondering how Muck fared with his practice partner. To Blister's surprise, Muck roamed between the sparring partners, overseeing the practice with Puss, Seltzer, and Madam Putreska. Occasionally, he would interrupt 2 rats to offer corrections or refinements. opeRATives nodded at whatever Muck told them. They applied his suggestions without hesitation. "Ticks and maggots," Blister gawked. He gawked while dusting off sand, and he gawked while Yuck took her turn to attack him. He gawked so long, he utterly failed to apply the technique correctly on Yuck, who reversed his momentum and pinned him yet again to the sand. Shouting over the sea's boom and slosh, Putreska offered advice and encouragement. Be relaxing. Be accepting. Be receptive to the attack. No pushing, no pulling, only blending. She might as well have spoken Swahili, for all the sense her guidance made to Blister. What was battle, if not a conversation of push and pull? How could anyone relax when being attacked? Accepting went with pleasant things like gifts, not with wild-eyed yucks who locked one's wrist in a pin made of electric sparks. This is being enough sparring, Madam Putreska decreed. Finally, Blister exhaled. Yuck shook his paw politely. Thanks, Blister. You're fun to pin. Next time, you should try pinning your partner once or twice. Blister would have sneered, only he was too busy picking beach grit from the gaps between his 5 or 6 teeth. Time for training awareness, alertness, and reflexes. Putreska directed the opeRATives to form large groups. The groups circled around one rat, which they would attack as a mob. After successfully fending off all foes, the lone rat rejoined the group, and a different rat took a turn defeating the horde. In Blister's group, Fungus snuck up on Meyer, determined to tackle. Just as Fungus clamped his target in a bear hug, Meyer pivoted and tossed Fungus, who slid across the sand the way a flat pebble skips over water. Attack, toss. Attack, fling. With poise and grace, every rat performed this pattern. Every rat except Blister. His attackers clung to him as if he were covered in glue. When Fungus shoved him, he shoved back. But this action did not send Fungus pebble-skipping away. As the two tussled, other rats piled on until Blister was buried. The tides hissed. Muck pulled Blister from the pile. To the group he said, "Carry on. I shall tutor this perspicacious pupil." Once they claimed their own section of sand, Blister said, "Good thinking, Muck. Now we can get to the dining hall before anyone else. Beat the line." "And bypass your chance to greedily grasp a complex concept? Blister, you are fiendishly funny." For several minutes, Muck helped Blister feel what Madam Putreska preached. He squeezed Blister's arm. Then he pointed out all the tense areas in Blister's posture. He tapped each tight spot and commanded like a wizard spouting spells. Relax, give in, accept. As the resistance eased, Blister found he could move Muck as if he were nothing but a paper streamer. Fabulous and fascinating, isn't it? It is. Blister grinned as he helped Muck out of the sand. For a long moment he scrutinized the butter-blonde rat. What's the matter? Have I subsequently slathered seaweed on my fur? No, you just... I don't know. Blister rolled a flotsam twig under his foot. You don't look like the same silver whisker I found in the alley, surrounded by cats. Muck chuckled. His chest swelled with something more than air. To be perfectly plain, I don't recall who or what I was then. I feel tremendously transformed. I guess I was wrong, Blister said. You were cut out for city life after all. Oh, no, I wasn't. I couldn't have changed without a lot of help. Muck towed little swirls in the sand, then erased them with his tail. He towed some more as he said, I owe considerable credit to Madam Putreska, the opeRATives, and of course to, well... His gaze lowered from Blister to the sand scrawls. About that time, Dr. Stowe exited the stone tunnel with Ooze and Horchata close behind. Ooze! Some rat shouted. Horchata! Seltzer bellowed as he rocketed across the beach, trailing feathers. Ooze's eyes twinkled when she waved at everyone. "Hello." "Good morning," Horchata supplied before Seltzer torpedoed her to the sand. All the opeRATives piled on Ooze. All except Blister. He lingered, determined to read Muck's scribbled sand swirls. Who else had he wanted to thank? "This is being amazing," Madam Putreska cheered. "How did you do it, Dr. Stoll?" The squirrel gave the sand an authoritative poke with his walking stick.
"Madam, my medicinal methods are prohibitively proprietary and therefore supremely secret. But I can tell you my colleagues and I cured these patients by ventilating the ventricles of their thinking and speaking capabilities."
"But Horchata started speaking before you vented her whatnots,"
Blister remarked when he joined the crowd.
"Isn't it possible that the addled animals just need time for their brains to heal?"
Dr. Stowe's brow rumpled.
"You benighted believers always mistake correlation and causation. Was it time, or was it treatment? Only science and its methodical mechanisms can say."
Seltzer pressed his cheeks to Horchata's, and they clicked their beaks in a pigeon's giggle. "I knew you'd recover. I knew it all the time," he cooed. "So what can you be telling us about your abductions?" "Not much, eh?" Ooze frowned. The ocean waves boomed against the sheer rock cliffs. The gulls sang question marks. "It's hard to remember," Horchata said. Muck sympathized. "Because you suffered a dire disturbance, a traumatic trial, a horrendous hullabaloo." Ooze and Horchata shook their heads. "Nothing that bad. The memories are still hazy, you know," Ooze said. "I remember the trap closing in around me and the police horse. Then these wooden panels wrapped around the trap. Couldn't see where we were going, but the police horse, Virgil, thought he could smell the dim thumb. That matched my homing senses." "Oh, my precious pigeon!" Muck caged his ears in his paws. "No need to be vainly vulgar." "You're mistaken," Seltzer said. "All pigeons have homing senses. It's like a world map built in our heads." While Muck delivered a genteel apology, other opeRATives observed the similarities between Horchata's trap and the one used to capture the zoo rhino and circus panther. "A herd of cats chased me into a trap," Ooze said. "Some band of truant kids scared off the cats. They rushed me to someone's front door. I couldn't see an address. Those knuckleheads were pitching my cage around like a baseball. But then, a woman with a chipped tooth gave the children some coins and took me into, I guess, a ballroom?" Not far off, cormorants squabbled over a fish. They mantled their dark wings and used tug-of-war to settle the dispute. Something similar unfolded in Blister's mind around the chip-toothed detail. It struck him as familiar and important, but he wasn't sure why. "What are you meaning, a ballroom?" Horchata nodded. "That's where me and Virgil wound up too." "It's hard to explain." Ooze frowned. "But it was a ballroom with a tall, spinning star tree." "Yes, precisely." The opeRATives shared tilted eyebrow glances. "Once you were being there, you were seeing Dr. Van Singfreud with his wool suit and cat-head cane, yes?" Putreska asked. "No, Ooze said. I only ever saw women. Hired laboratory assistants, judging by their uniforms.
Horchata added, I saw the doctor when he and his big grumbling henchmen trapped poor Virgil and me, but I never saw him in the ballroom. As the coal-stained sea slid off the beach, it hissed. Whether with disappointment or with satisfaction was difficult to discern.
This is where my memory really fogs. They interrogated us rats for hours. Where was Madam Putreska's central command? When we wouldn't say, they shone bright lights in our eyes, or dunked us in buckets of water, or zapped us. Finally, they snapped me into some kind of harness. I couldn't move, not even wiggle. Then they strapped something to my head.
The air seemed colder when Blister imagined Ooze and Horchata wearing the same woven leather cap Yana strapped to his head. But he quickly discarded the idea.
It had never scorched his head, and he distinctly recalled seeing singes on Ooze's fur and Horchata's feathers.
He asked, And then what happened?
I don't remember after that, Ooze said.
Horchata said, The lab ladies were sure surprised to find me in the trap with Virgil. Rather than let me go, they put me in a cage. I saw lots of other city creatures, a few sea creatures in aquariums, some forest critters too.
Ooze jumped in. I didn't see any other creatures, just rats.
Horchata insisted. I didn't see any rats, and we weren't interrogated.
This is making some sense, Madam Putreska said.
We know Dr. Van Sinkfreud started trapping rats to be finding the caverns. When that was failing, he started trapping animals of all kinds. That is being what he wants most of all. But we are still not knowing why. This is why you must be sharing every tiny detail.
Ooze indicated she had nothing more to tell.
Horchata offered,
I think there was a party because I remember a donut with a candle in it. Or, no, some wolves broke into the ballroom. Never mind, it's all a mess in my head now.
The waves struck the cliffs with more slosh than boom. The tide was going out, wiping all marks off the slimy brown sand.
After whatever they did to us, Ooze said, I think they dumped us in the city.
Callously cruel,
Muck stomped his foot.
In your senseless states, you might have been cravenly crushed by a wending wagon.
Or an ominous omnibus,
Dr. Stowe added, which caused Muck to roll his eyes.
I think that was their hope, Ooze said.
Dastardly devils,
Muck fumed.
Murderous myrmidons,
Dr. Stowe confirmed. He seized Muck's paw and shook it with zeal.
Always a pleasure to meet an academic affiliate, a homiletic helper, so to speak.
Indeed,
Muck grimaced a grin.
The palliative pleasures, all mine.
Dr. Stowe, please be pardoning my interruption, Madam Putreska said. But I would like to be knowing when the patients will be able to be returning to daily life. Dr. Stowe thoughtfully smacked his mostly toothless gums.
Madam, the practical proceedings are thus. I release the patients from my care now, and they can remain thus, assuming I see no compromising complications in their recoveries.
A collective cheer echoed out of the cove. Scuba me, producers. You can't end the episode there. We're about to solve this conspiracy. Now's not the time to clam up. We have to keep going now that Horchata and Ooze's lips are no longer sealed. Plus, things between Blister and Muck just got super emotional. I'd be lying if I said this moment on the beach doesn't have an impact going forward. The coast is by no means clear. So let's go. More episode. Aw, come on. Haven't you ever heard the expression carpe diem? It means fish all day. Wait a second. That's a different kind of carp. I stand corrected. It actually means seize the day. Huh? What do you mean I've gone overboard with my beach puns? You're not turning off my mic. Never in the history of this show have you ever... Well, we're back. And I'm very happy to report that we will indeed have more episode next week during the Season 2 finale. Will Blister and Muck finally track down and arrest Dr. Van Sangfroid? Will they finally get to resume the one-for-one and none-for-all life back in the bell tower? I guess we'll have to wait and see. In the meantime, stop by blisterandmuck.com, where you can take a deep dive into fascinating oceanic information. While you're at the site, you can use the contact form to tell me what you think is going to happen in the Season 2 finale. Know any beach jokes better or worse than these? What does the ocean say to the beach? Nothing, it just waves. Why was the beach sand wet? Because the seaweed. If you dare to share a joke, I'll share it on the show and give you a shout out. You'll never miss an episode when you subscribe to the podcast at blisterandmuck.com. This podcast is made possible by the generous support it receives from panther-loving listeners like you.
Oh, don't forget the tremendous trio, Pace, Jillian, and Vera.
Oh yeah, those three are awesome. I think that Pace will grow up to be a real crackerjack tough-tail.
Yes, especially if he shares half of all his meals with you.
Look, if I save his life from an electric rat trap and a band of cats, then it seems only fair.
Guys, I'm kind of doing the credits here.
Oh, sorry.
Abundant apologies. Carry on.
When you visit the Support the Show page, you can make a donation using the secure PayPal button, or visit the Blister and Muck gift shop and select a rat-tastic t-shirt, hat, tote, or face mask. A portion of every purchase helps cover the costs of web hosting, music, and sound effects. Plus, you'll receive a secret surprise from the entire Blister and Muck crew, included with your gear. You also support the show whenever you tell your friends and the kids at school who never tie their shoes how much you enjoy listening every week, and that they should give a listen too. Special thanks to Roland Rudzitis for serving up the Blister and Muck theme song. Additional public domain music from Kevin MacLeod and Montplaisir. Mike Koenig brought the ocean waves. Additional water sounds from Art for Noise at Pond 5. Other public domain sounds from freesound.org. Seagull sounds from Daniel Simeon. Additional bird sounds from the public domain at soundbible.com. I am always grateful for my family, friends, and fans. One for one, and all for you.